Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal, where you can see once again I'm joined by James Benge of CBS Sports, which only means one thing. It is Inside Arsenal Extra Time. It is Thursday, James. It's been a few days now to sort of mull over, assess what happened at the weekend, how the season finished, how you've been finding it all the last few days.
Oh, I mean, it's taken a while. I felt worse on Monday than I'd felt on Sunday night. I mean, partly you just end up thinking about all the effort that people put into what that Monday could have been. And I mean, I know you wouldn't have been there, so maybe you weren't. I mean, I'm sure you were pretty devastated, but still, there's all that hard work that goes into celebrations that don't happen. And so, yeah, Monday was a bit of just a sort of bit of a damp squib, really. And I think it doesn't help that when City win it, you're just like, there's very little to raise yourself about, very little as a reporter as well that you kind of want to write beyond the same old story. What about you? Yeah, bit underwhelming.
Yeah, it was. Like you said on Monday, that I just know that people at the club had put so much work into sort of 2 weeks leading up to that. In terms
knowing
of
that it was a long shot as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like the parade. I mean, we saw the video. Someone put a video. The dress rehearsal they had to go through on the Saturday night. All the planning for the parade. Imagine you do all that work for a good couple of weeks, constantly, kind of knowing it's probably not going to come to anything. And I imagine, Monday was very, very disappointing in terms of that. How I felt, I was more gutted than I thought I was going to be on Sunday after the game. I think because, I was up there from sort of 12 o'clock in the pub, and we went up to Finsbury Park, was in the 12 pins, then walked down quite early, got in the ground early for the 2-for-1 offer, and the atmosphere downstairs in the concourse was unbelievable around sort of block 5, block 6, and the atmosphere was great, and I had such a good time with my mates. And you kind of, although I knew it wasn't going to happen. The longer you stay in that sort of environment, the more drinks you have, the more fun you're having. You kind of allow yourself more and more to think, oh, it could happen. You never know. What if it could? And yeah, I think I allowed myself a little bit too much to get swayed by the opinion that it might actually happen, and it wasn't such a foregone conclusion. Then obviously within
and there
90
were little moments, weren't there? I don't know if I mean, around us, and I think a lot of people sort of said, "Oh, we never heard that." But around us in the press box, there were genuinely people who thought, and I think it's that sort of game of Chinese whispers or whatever you want to call it, where some people find out it's 2-1, and the thingy goes around that West Ham score, and then some people find out a few minutes later, and they tell their mates, and it sort of starts spreading, and people go,
yeah,
West Ham scored again.
That 2-2-1, yeah, it spread around absolutely where we were, directly opposite where you guys are, and it spread around very quickly after the 2-1 that it was 2-2. But I was looking at my phone, and so I never believed it, because I was looking, I was like, it's 2-1. It's there's no. I haven't had anything come through that it's 2-2, and no one on Twitter was saying it was 2-2. So I never actually allowed myself to believe that, thankfully, because that would have been really disappointing. But lots and lots of people around me did.
The Souček goal, and that, I mean, what was so strange about that, again, sort of feeling it's sort of live. And I mean, I had the iPad with Kaya in the first half, and when City went 2-0 up, I was like, no, that goes away. That's a curse. But you saw that Souček had scored, and you could hear people shouting out to the players 3-2. And I do believe, and we'll never know the answer, but that sort of raised Arsenal, who were going to go for the winner anyway, but maybe gave them that extra 2-3% to get the goal. And then sort of right as the VAR is checking Havertz's goal, the sort of news filters through, and you see the first clips of Souček's goal. And I think that's the challenge, really, is it hit you both in that sort of painful, like there was never a chance moment in the first 20 minutes. And it kept giving you, the whole day kept giving you these little openings. Like the atmosphere at half time was incredible, and 10-15 minutes earlier it had been like the morgue. I think that made it a little bit harder, because it's not even like that you could have that moment where Arsenal were champions. There was never a moment in that day where they were as close as they were at the start of the day, but there were always those moments where they could hope and they could dream, and I think that's what made it so tough.
I'm glad there wasn't a moment when Arsenal were champions, though. I think I was saying that before the game. I was like, I really hope because I knew City were going to win that game. There was no way, unless something remarkable happened and they had a couple of players sent off or something. There was no way they weren't going to beat West Ham on the final day. And yeah, I was happy that the goal went in early. It would have been awful if they'd have got, sort of 20 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go. Suddenly they do what they did against Villa a couple of seasons back, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was disappointing, but look, it was an amazing season. We'll talk about that. Obviously, we're going to do our sort of end of season awards in this show today. And yeah, I was watching the players when they're walking around on the lap of appreciation and thinking how they must be feeling. We talked there about the staff putting 10 load of work in for that game for the sort of parade and stuff on Monday. But you think the players and Arteta and the coaching staff and everyone, the analysts, 10 months of work, achieving what they achieved, breaking so many records, setting a standard that we just haven't seen before really at Arsenal. And to still fall short, it must have been, they must have been so proud of what they did and the performance levels they hit and the standards they hit. But then they must have been so disappointed to think ultimately we still didn't win it. And can we match those levels again? Because it's going to be such a challenge. I was thinking about it, to hit those sort of numbers, to go on that sort of run. It's going to be such a challenge next season. I still think I still honestly think Arsenal will win the league next season. I really, I felt that this season as well, but I do think they will. But whether they can hit that sort of standard again, certainly the standard they set in that second half of the season was just absolutely remarkable. It really was.
And huge credit. I wrote this at the time. I think you sort of almost felt it as it was happening. Huge credit to Mikel Arteta in particular for doing something we've never had to sort of really see him do before, and rallying the supporters, rallying the players from what was a pretty deeply depressed moment. And almost immediately after Arteta's speech finished, and as it was happening, you sense this sea change of, like you said, I mean, I wonder if you hadn't had that Arteta speech, would you have been so convinced that it is happening? And everyone he spoke to, press conference, on the pitch, TV, it was all, we're going to win the league. We're going to do it. And I think, I don't know if that, but I mean, it's certainly the belief surged through the crowd. So everyone in the press box was talking about the speech and writing about it in the days after. And I have no doubt, we've seen what Arteta's like in the dressing room. I have no doubt he will get those players believing. And kind of like you, I think the best is yet to come with this team. And I think they could eclipse the standards they've set this year. That's how young, talented they are. But
what did you make of Rodri's comments that the mentality was the difference? I thought they were rubbish. I mean, I don't think it was really a dig at Arsenal. People dressed it up as a dig. I don't think it was. I mean, he praised Arsenal a lot and said they could have been champions, but I don't know. I look back at the season. I look back at where maybe the fine margins where things could have changed, and I just don't look at that Etihad game and that result and that performance as anything to do with where the title didn't quite or did slip through the grasp. And I don't think there was a we don't want to win this game mentality for Arsenal on that. I think they could have easily won the game with what they created in it and the way that they defended. I think
just what I was going to say. I mean, if Martinelli's better on the break in the last few minutes, then Arsenal win the league. And I think it's Trossard.
Yeah.
Yes. If they could, if they take their chance, of course, Arsenal went to the Etihad to keep it tight, and they would have thought we've got a better chance of winning this game 1-0 than 4-3. They've got the best defense in the league. Like, why would they not play that way? We all know where. If you want to say the league was lost at a point, what that point is. I think the sort of bigger question is like, there are the big existential questions for the Premier League that we're not going to solve on Inside Arsenal Extra Time about what it means that if you just have 3 bad days, you're out of the title race, because that's what cost Arsenal the league.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly that. People talk about Villa and that's where they lost the league. It's like you basically lose one game in half a season, and that's where you lost the league. It's like that's normal. That's just normal. You drop 5 points in half a season, take 49 out of 54 points, and it's still not enough. But like you said, we'll have to see how it all pans out at Manchester City. But those are the standards that they've set, and if Arsenal are going to win it, and I do think they will, they're going to have to. They're going to have to hit those standards once again. What did you make of Mikel? Obviously, I wasn't in the press conference afterwards. What was he like in the press conference? How did he sort of handle it all?
Yes, I think. I mean, there was a sort of slightly downbeat start, but actually, I sort of felt as he was going on, there was more oomph and belief from him, and he was sort of living or speaking the messages quite convincingly. You got a sense, and he was so capable of explaining that he just knew, he knows. And I think one of the things he has to articulate to the fan base, and especially to the club and the players, is he knows what the next steps need to be. The lines that stood out, I mean, he literally said that, but the line that really stood out for me as well was that talk of bite. You know, that they need to just be a little bit more aggressive, really, to take the league next season. I think he's placing a lot of pressure on himself. That's right the way down to, I know what needs to improve. I will be the one to fix it. And he's always done that from day one. I think, so this is, he's, since day one at Arsenal, I think he has crafted a story to Arsenal that is quite familiar, especially in sporting terms. You know, the team that has to take the setbacks on its pursuit of immortality. You know, you see this, like, you know, you remember teams like, you know, the Chicago Bulls is the one that immediately comes to mind, beaten so many times by the Detroit Pistons. I mean, you had this with the Pistons when they were beat by the Celtics. It's a very familiar story in the US in particular, that you have to take your defeats to become this great champion. And I think what Arteta has done is created a story around Arsenal that we all believe ends in them winning the biggest trophies. And I think the sheer weight of that belief, it's a bit like Bayer Leverkusen for so long. Like, they just believed they weren't going to win games, and that belief sort of manifested in them not losing games. And I think Arteta has created a story that's probably going to manifest itself into reality, because the players, the club, the fans, they just can't quite believe that it doesn't end in winning the league. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, I look back at the Invincibles as well, 2003, 2004. You know, what happened the previous season, sort of giving away the league the way they did, when it was just there for the taking, and they were undoubtedly the best team in the league that season, and they managed to basically throw it away the way they did. And then they came back and just responded in that unbelievable way of thinking, right, that's it, we're not doing that again, and going through the season without even losing a single game. And, you know, it took that disappointment, I think, of what happened in 02-03 to spur them on to achieve the heights that they hit in 03-04. And, you know, I really do think the team are going to I think they're going to use this. We've seen it with this Arsenal team before. They do use previous disappointments very, very well. And, you know, this will hurt. There's no doubt that this will hurt a lot, but I really think it's going to fuel the fire in terms of the coming season. And yeah, I thought Mikel's speech afterwards was really good on it to the crowd. Just the "don't be satisfied" line as well. It was, I think it was the right tone. It was the right message to send out. Is what the fans wanted to hear. And, you know, no fan in there is going to be satisfied with finishing second. Absolutely not going to be satisfied with it. I think every fan in there could understand how good Arsenal were this season, how close they came. But yeah, I think there's really good things to come, and I'll be very, very surprised if Arsenal don't at least sort of hit these standards again, but even go further. I just think the hunger.
They are going to smash Aston Villa and Fulham to pieces next season.
Yeah.
The first time they run into those two teams, watch as everyone declares themselves fit. Everyone gives it the full 90, and they obliterate at least one of those teams.
Yeah, well, I absolutely hope you're right. Those two games in December. I was finishing off my book this week because the updated version comes out in July, and obviously I was waiting. I'd kind of written most of it, but left it last week because I needed to know how it finished. Obviously, needed to know how the story finished, and it's sort of obviously this Monday and Tuesday. Monday was really hard to write. I was really hungover, and I was just very demoralized after not doing it. But I kind of, as I rounded off the final chapter, and the way I was writing, and in terms of what Arsenal had achieved and where they are right now, and the belief in terms of that is there, I just even that was kind of it's kind of nice. It brought closure on the season to me, and the way I finished it, it just felt, just the way I was writing it, like this is going to happen. It is going to happen. I'm absolutely sure of
You
it.
get another edition out of it then.
No, I'm not sure. I think that's it done now. This was the updated for the paperback, which comes out in July, by the way, people. So keep your eyes peeled. Not that you're not going to hear me mention it a lot in the build up to it coming out. But yeah, it didn't quite get the ending we were hoping for, but still, it certainly covers another really exciting season with Arsenal. We're going to talk about that season now because we're going to give out our end of season Inside Arsenal Extra Time Awards. Sod the FWA Awards, sod the Premier League Award. This is what it's about. It is Arsenal related, so we're not going to be talking really too much about other teams and what happened. But in terms of the Arsenal Awards, this is the big one. It's the one that I know at London Colney they're all eagerly awaiting, and they've been desperately waiting for it. So yeah, we're going to go through some of our awards that I'm sure some of you agree with, some of you won't. But let's see if me and you agree first of all. So we'll start with the big one, shall we? The Player of the Season award. I think we're going to agree on this one. Declan Rice.
I think, spoiler alert, at the Grammys every year, there's always that one person that sort of wins all the awards, and they have to sort of hold them like they're holding 6 babies at once. They've got so many awards. Spoiler alert, I have a little feeling Declan Rice might be like that. And Declan,
is Declan Rice the what's the name at the Brit Awards? What's the name who cleaned up this year?
Oh, Ray,
yeah.
He is very much the Ray of 23-24. A ray of light, you might say.
I have to admit though, I very near, because we did this a while back, didn't we? We talked about our player of the season, and we both said Rice. I nearly switched to Martin Odegaard. I think Martin Odegaard has pushed him very, very, very close this season. I think Odegaard has been really, really good.
Can you believe I didn't have Odegaard in my top 5?
What was your top 5 then?
I don't think he was in my top 5. I think I tried to be a clever clogs, as I often do.
Like your Crystal Palace top 4 moment for this week.
Hey, I put something like that in print. Gareth Southgate clearly agrees with me as well.
Still doesn't make it right.
Yeah, this one's so easy though. I think Rice has improved Arsenal defensively like beyond measure, although you can measure it in terms of the number of goals they conceded. He's been so much more of an offensive player than we thought he could be. He looks like he can be Arsenal 6 or 8 for the next decade. He's brought charisma. And from day one, he's just sort of risen to the moment. There are vanishingly few numbers of players that reach 9-figure transfer fees that justify it. But I don't think anyone even complains about the half price. I don't think anyone would complain if Arsenal did pay twice the price. That's how good he is. He's phenomenal.
Declan Rice, we got him half price, and it's tough to argue with that assessment from the Arsenal fans, is it? It is very tough. He's been absolutely brilliant. Like you said, everything he's brought to the team, defensively, offensively, personality-wise, leadership-wise. And the most exciting thing is I just think he's going to get better as well. I think season on season, he's just going to develop under Arteta, and he's going to get better. He's going to have more things to his game. And yeah, just outstanding debut season for him.
Do you think he's going to be a 6 or an 8?
I think he's going to be an 8. I keep thinking, the more I watched him this season, the more I think that if they can do something in midfield this season, it might well be they're bringing a new 6 and keep Rice at 8. But I also think the way Arteta plays, is still going to have that sort of versatility of, one day he can be an 8, one day he can be a 6, and someone else can switch around. But I really like him as that 8 in this Arsenal team. I just think the physicality he brings, the engine he brings up there, the ability to win the ball back high up the pitch. I think he looks really, really good around the final third at times as well. He's a threat. I think if you add a really top level 6 behind him, young, energetic, who can cover a lot of ground, I just think that's a really exciting prospect. So yeah, but I think it's also great and exciting the fact he can play both those positions equally as well.
Plus, if you play him as an 8, you do also get a bit of 6 out of him. Did you see that moment? Yeah. It was like in the last 5 minutes against Everton, and it was Everton have sort of 3 or 4 players going at Saliba, and Rice is kind of chasing back. He's in, but and there's just one moment where the Everton player, whoever it is that's leading the break, takes a heavy touch, and Rice just goes, afterburners on, boom, takes the ball, and you like, what was the worry here? So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think an 8 with a game controlling 6, like a sort of, a Frankie De Jong, would be the dream scenario for Arsenal.
Right, goal of the season. Let's go now. What's your goal of the season?
Again, it's Declan Rice against West Ham. I think it's partly just because of the sheer, it's got to be more than just the goal, which is this brilliant hit, of course. And, you go, and you couldn't quite believe it was Declan Rice, even though it sort of felt like manifest destiny that he would score at the London Stadium on his return. I think it also has to be a little bit about the sort of atmosphere. And I mean, you could pick another 2 Declan Rice goals for this at least. But the way that West Ham fans, the ones who'd stayed behind when they were 4 or 5-0 down at halftime,
5.
was it 5?
Oh, it's 4-0 at halftime. They scored 2 more.
4-0 at halftime. And understandably, a lot of them had been like, I'm going home. And then the ones that stayed behind were just like, oh, for Christ's sake, why on earth didn't we go with everyone else? Yeah. It was one of the most curious experiences I've ever had at a live game, or certainly had at a live game this season. So yeah, it's the one that stuck out to me when you asked me this question immediately.
So we're going to do a funniest moment of the season award later on in this show, and I would have this right up there as well, because it was just like you said, that it was just hilarious when he scored it, and all the West Ham fans who were left in the stadium around me were just like, "Oh, for God, of course!" and just all got up and went for the exits at that point. It was very, very funny. Yeah, I think I probably agree. I was trying to think of other goals that I really loved this season. Saka's against Forest on the opening day was great. Gabriel Jesus away in Seville was a really, really lovely goal as well. This goal, Declan Rice's goal at West Ham, the passing leading up to it was fantastic. The only thing that ruined it a bit was the fact that Odegaard and Trossard, I think, sort of got in each other's way from the cutback, and so that's how it ended up going back to Rice, didn't it? Because I think the cutback was aimed for either Trossard or Odegaard, and they both were going to hit it and then left it for each other, and it just rolled between the pair of them, and that's when Rice came legging it on. But the actual move, apart from that one little sort of miscommunication, was fantastic as well, the way Arsenal played the ball up the pitch. So, yeah, I'd probably give it as this one, as in sheer quality of a goal. Obviously, there's other goals that were huge moments in the season. But, yeah, I think this one probably, for me, it was just a proper sort of gasp when it flew into the top corner the way it did. So, yeah, I think I agree with you on
also
that.
Mentioned Ben White's against Chelsea. I don't know whether he meant it, but it was great fun.
Oh, he didn't mean that one, did he? In no way he meant that. No way he meant that. Right. Let's go with moment of the season now. What's your moment of the season?
I don't think many people would pick this, because obviously the Champions League campaign didn't quite peter out, but it was maybe what you would have expected from a Champions League campaign at the start of the season, that Arsenal win a round, get that monkey off their back, but they just don't have the experience to go all the way. Having said that, I don't remember many better atmospheres at the Emirates, and many sort of moments that felt like just like a real this sense of togetherness, quite like when David Raya saved Galeno's penalty against Porto. The atmosphere was brilliant. I think it was a moment where you were sort of like, the big argument of the season, which had been eased into the background, was over. David Raya had vindicated himself, and he looks to have been a top quality goalkeeper. A really great signing for Arsenal. And yeah, it mattered a lot more than we remember, because of the defeat to Bayern Munich, and how there's a sense that there could have been more in that Champions League campaign for Arsenal than they got. But just getting through, getting the monkey off your back, winding up Sergio Conceição no end, and just limbs at the Emirates late at night. I thought for me that was the moment I've most enjoyed. Whether it's a sort of, you could pick, and I'm sure you will probably pick something like Rice against Manchester United, or Jesus against Manchester United, Martinelli. There's lots of great ones, but it was one I enjoyed more maybe than most.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was an absolutely huge moment. I think that in the next couple of years, that could prove to be a really big moment as well, because although it did end up disappointingly going out to Bayern Munich, I still think getting through that game against Porto is going to is going to be sort of big for Arsenal. You know, had they gone out at that stage of this competition again, like this time next season, we'd all be talking about that round of 16 curse and all that. It was a really big moment, and it felt like a really big moment in the crowd. You know, it was very, very special. I mean, look, Martinelli's goal against Manchester City was just so big for so many reasons. Ultimately, it didn't end up, you know, proving decisive, but it felt like at the time it was a huge moment just to beat them in the league. The fact it came so late on as well, the celebrations when it went in, you know, the Emirates has been a raucous place for the last couple of seasons. There's been huge celebrations after a lot of goals, but the celebrations when that goal went in, it was that will live with me for a long, long time. And I just think it was a really big moment for this young team. And ultimately, obviously, it didn't, like I said, didn't prove to be decisive. But I still think it's given them the belief that they can really, you know, they can take on anyone and they can beat anyone. So yeah, I think like you, the Raya save and Martinelli against Man City are two of the moments that really sort of stand out for me on this one.
Plus, if we didn't want to give everything to Declan Rice, did we?
Well, we say that because now I'm going to say signing of the season. Now I wonder who this might be.
Oh, sorry, Kai.
Yeah, sorry, Kai. Sorry, David.
Just briefly give some love to Kai Havertz, who I posted that or on the concourse at half time. I sort of popped out because we had a brass band near where the press box is, and it sounded great fun rather than stood around moaning in the press box. And the way that hundreds and hundreds of people were gathered around this brass band dancing to the Kai Havertz chant, which is sort of, as I tweeted at the time, I remember a moment where the 60 million down the drain, Kai Havertz scores again, felt like quite a risky chant to commit to if you're an Arsenal fan. It was just a bit like, anything else you could come up with? And given all the grief that former Chelsea players have had at Arsenal because they've caused to Arsenal, I think it's just been brilliant for Havertz, seeing him unlock the player he was meant to be. Having said all that, it's obviously Declan Rice, isn't it?
It is obviously Declan Rice, yes, but I agree. I think Havertz absolutely deserves his flowers. You know, we sat at the start of this season for a good couple of months, didn't we, debating it, looking at it, thinking can't really see any sign that this is going to work, hoping that it would, but we weren't seeing too much to suggest it was. You saw a player who was clearly struggling for confidence, belief in himself. And then for him just to sort of flourish over the second half of the season into this, I mean, he was a leader, really. That whole running, he was one of the key driving forces of the running to push Arsenal that close to the title. The goals he scored, what he brought to the team, how just you can see a player just change in front of you in terms of how they're handling themselves, what they look, their demeanor, their belief, everything about them. I think he deserves huge credit for getting through those tough months, believing in himself, staying confident in himself. Obviously, I think the players and Mikel Arteta deserve a lot of credit for that as well, because they stuck with him. And yeah, for him to turn it to flourish the way he has just been great. And I can't wait to see him next season, how he's going to continue to develop next season in that role. So yeah, 100%. I think he deserves it. So what about biggest disappointment of the season for you? Actually, I think I know what you're going to go with here, because I've gone with it and I've got a picture ready, so I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. The Premier League.
We're not talking about disappointing performance yet. We're talking about biggest disappointment of the season.
Yeah, I think if you were Arsenal, and I mean Mikel Arteta said as much, even with the rivalry considered, if you could pick a player in the Premier League to be bearing down on goal 1-on-1 versus a goalkeeper who you know is the best finisher in the Premier League, you know, if you look at XG data, he is probably up there with Lionel Messi as the greatest pure finisher of his generation. Can score off both feet, cold-blooded assassin. You know, if you were picking someone to go 1-on-1 with Stefan Ortega with the title on the line, you would pick Son. And it was a crushing play. It was the moment you knew the title was going to City. It was the moment City knew it. Everything went wrong when Son hit that ball at Ortega's leg, and you knew it was never coming. It was never coming home to North London, so to speak. Sorry, England on the brain. Yeah, that hurt. Like I don't know. I think with everything else, you can sort of compartmentalize, and then we're going to talk about kind of when Arsenal weren't their best, but you sort of can set everything they did wrong against like the million and one things they did right. But the one time that Tottenham couldn't deliver for it, and Son couldn't score a high quality chance, was the one time Arsenal needed him to. So that was pretty disappointing.
That was very disappointing. It's so mad. Just thinking back to that moment, it's so like you said, the whole season was on the line. There must have been a moment, because he had 2-3 seconds to think about it as he went through, that he thought to himself, "I am going to win Arsenal the title." There must have been a moment where I'm sure that crossed his mind. Which I'd love to speak to him about it. I've seen that, he said afterwards, I'm only human and stuff like that. But I'd love to really know if he had time to think about the consequences of what was what was on his shoulders as he went through there. It'd be really, really interesting. Because even the crowd, were you there? You were, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
There
And you could
was
feel
there a genuine gasp as he went through of people sort of realizing the situation, having time to realize the situation as it was unfolding in front of their eyes?
Because don't forget, I will always say the crowd, when instinct took over, when they got those early chances, Tottenham fans at the ground wanted to beat Man City. And we saw why on the final day of the season when Palace smashed Villa to smithereens. But in that moment, in the 86th minute, I think most Tottenham fans, and who knows, maybe Son, kind of thought, okay, but the one thing we really don't want to happen is the draw, where we can't get Champions League football, but we hand. And it was that gasp of like, oh my God, all we're going to do here is we're going to achieve nothing except giving the title to Arsenal. Like you say, like, at the very least, it was the finish of someone that sort of realized what was about to happen, wasn't it? And I don't believe that. And I've seen people of an Arsenal persuasion say he missed it on purpose.
Yeah, no.
If he missed it on purpose, he's putting his 6 yards wide of goal. He's not hitting it into Ortega.
You're not taking the risk of going through the legs or something like that, are you?
It could just bounce off and hit you in the face or whatever and go in. But I do. But he finished it like a man that was thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to hand the league to Arsenal."
Absolutely, it wasn't a finish of someone who was just thinking goal. It was a finish of someone who had loads of thoughts running through his mind at one moment, and I'm sure it must have been. So yeah, I agree. In terms of Arsenal point of view, disappointment of the season, I think for me, Gabriel Martinelli probably is up there because of the standards he set the previous year, and I think injuries really, he got that early hamstring injury against Everton. He just lost his way a little bit. You could see his confidence was a bit gone. Then you had Trossard sort of taking his place in the team, and yeah, I think when you look at players, if you could have had a really fit and firing Martinelli in that Arsenal team for the majority of the season, I think that would have been such a huge boost and could have potentially got him over the line. But I think it has to be the injury to Urian Timber on the opening day, basically robbing yourself of such a high quality player who really felt like he could make a huge impact on the team from what we'd seen him in pre-season. I think that was such a massive crushing disappointment to him, to Arteta, to the squad, to the team. I hate that cliche that Wenger always used to use of like a new signing, but this genuinely will be like a new signing this season because we haven't been able to use it. We signed him, so he was a new signing, but then haven't been able to use him. But now this season we will, and so it's a huge plus to the squad having a player of that quality involved next season. But for this season, it was a massive blow.
It's going to be so. By the way, thing I'm most looking forward to next season: what does Arteta do with Urian Timber? Everything I heard was he was signed a sort of right back cover.
Yeah, that's what I was told.
But he was so good that it was sort of immediately like, well, let's get him in the team. Let's have a look at him at left back. And I don't. My one urging to Arteta, whether Thomas Partey's at the club or not, or whoever, God, please don't go back to Partey right back and that horrible defensive line that he started the season with. That would be my one bit of advice to him. Yuck. But there's so many options, so many things to play with the sort of 6, 7 defenders that they've got, and we'll see who comes and goes. But it's a good place to be in.
What about best performance of the season? What you got for that?
Again, maybe one that people wouldn't necessarily go for, but I think Arsenal's season has been defined by the quality of their defence, and I don't think that defence has been better than in the home win over City, where they kept them to 4 shots. The only real chance was in the second minute, and some of that was obviously City's fault, but the muscularity with which they defended the team, defended the best team in the world. It was the moment you knew that this is a new Arsenal team, a team that is going to fight like hell, that is going to be punching the air when it gets a clean sheet, Gabriel style, that doesn't really generally make sloppy mistakes. I thought it was the performance that defined the season, and it was also actually, I think, as limited as they were in attack, and you could pick loads of games where they blew the opposition away. Newcastle, Liverpool, which I picked for a different category. I thought it was the one where I was most like, this Arsenal is a really serious team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was up there. I think the 2 games against Brighton as well, home and away, I thought they were absolutely brilliant. Especially the home game to that point, I thought was Arsenal's best performance of the season. They were just brilliant, I thought, in that game. Even though they had to wait a little quite late I think it was sort of 60 minutes or something like that. They finally got the breakthrough, wasn't it? But I thought they were really, really good. But I think the 3-1 against Liverpool at home, I thought they were, given they went into that game 5 points behind Liverpool as well. It's basically the season was on the line at that point. Liverpool were top, Arsenal 5 points behind. You lose that, you're 8 points behind the league leaders. It's basically season done at that point. And I thought they were so good in it. Even if they did concede that comedy goal right on half time, which was an absolute hammer blow to them, but then they came back, got a bit of luck in the second half. But I thought that was a top performance. Like you said, the City game, home and away, I thought they were great in those games against that City team to limit them to what they did. But I think I'd probably just give it to that Liverpool home game in the league.
It's a good choice.
Worst performance this season. I'm going to bring this picture up before either of us talk, because I know we're both going to agree on what the worst performance of the season was.
Dreadful.
I still can't believe they played that badly in this game. It's like it's such an outlier from everything else we saw basically all season. And they went in front after 5 minutes as well. They got the early goal, and it was such an odd performance, just out of nowhere. I know they lost to West Ham just before it, but that West Ham game was a completely different performance to what we saw at Fulham.
Yeah, the West Ham game, the Newcastle defeat, the Villa both Villa defeats. Those were games where you're like, oh, well, Villa got the breaks, West Ham got the breaks, but if you played that game 10 times, Arsenal would win it 7 or 8 times. That Fulham game was totally diabolical.
We were sitting next to each other, weren't we?
Yeah.
We were just we were looking at each other, just like, what's going on?
5 really good minutes where they took Fulham to the cleaners, and then it was almost like they scored, and then they sort of somehow there must have been some drinks break that we missed, where they started their New Year's celebrations early and all drank a bottle of vodka, because it was like they'd forgotten what they were playing and I mean, that went right the way through to Arteta. The substitutions were bizarre. He'd left on a sort of clearly hobbled Saka, and just Saka playing him at wing back, and Fulham found it so easy to defend. It's the only game I would really say this season where I was like, Arsenal deserved to lose. Didn't deserve a thing from it. And maybe deserved to lose by more because they were such architects of their own downfall. Fulham, eh? Who'd have thought that team would take 4 points off Arsenal?
I know. Arsenal 1 point from 6 against Fulham. What difference those games made. Yeah, I agree. Like the Villa home and away, I actually thought they played pretty well in the Villa home and away. Obviously, the second half of the Villa home game, they were poor, but the first half of that Villa game, they were as good as they had been all season. They were fantastic, and they just didn't score. I thought away from home at Villa, they played pretty well.
Such a weird game.
It was a really odd game, and kind of similar to the West Ham one. If the game pans out the same way 10 times, Arsenal win it 7 or 8 of those on 7 or 8 of those occasions. But yeah, this one was just such a rank bad performance from everyone. It was definitely the biggest disappointment in terms of performance levels of the season. What should we move on to now? If you've got kind of a must do better award, who would you put that to?
The award everyone wants.
Yeah.
I think we have to understand that he's obviously had a knee issue throughout this season. He told us as much in March. But Arsenal just need more from Gabriel Jesus. Whatever happens in the forward positions, whether they get the versatile attacker that they're looking for, whether they end up picking up sort of a true centre forward, even if they went out and got an absolute grade A superstar, which we don't really think is on the cards at the moment. Even in all that thing, there is so much to get from Gabriel Jesus. Whether he's going to be playing on the right predominantly next season, the left, and like you said, there are questions over Martinelli, and those are questions that maybe Jesus could be an answer to if needed. I don't want to be sort of like this is Jesus's fault, because we know he's not been at full fitness this season. But I think within this squad, there is no one who could transform what Arsenal are and what Arsenal can be more than Gabriel Jesus at the best of his levels. And at the best of his levels, Kai Havertz has to go and play in midfield or whatever, or Gabriel Martinelli comes out of the team, because the best version of Gabriel Jesus is a huge player for Arsenal, the sort of player that could be really impactful in a title-winning team, a really impactful starter in a title-winning Champions League-winning team. So, yeah, totally understand why this hasn't been his year. I'm not one of those Arsenal fans that would drive him to the airport, and I think those fans are entirely wrong. But we need more Gabriel Jesus if Arsenal are to, like you say, improve on last season, win the title. I don't see them being able to do that at all easily without Jesus offering 8 goals, double figures in goals at the very least in the Premier League.
Yeah, I agree. I pretty much everything you said there. We need more from him, absolutely, and I'm sure there is huge amounts more to come from him as well. What we saw from Gabriel Jesus this season wasn't the real Gabriel Jesus. It was a player clearly limited by his injuries, and I'd put Martinelli into the same bracket. The two of them combined, you could get 50-60% more out of both of those than what we saw this season, and it'd be a huge boost for Arsenal. And absolutely, like you, I would not be looking to move Gabriel Jesus on this summer. I think the focus just needs to be on getting him fully fit, sorting this knee out one way or the other if you can, and I hope you can, and then having him ready to go at the start of the season, because he's just got such a huge amount to give to this team. And the last award, let's go with the funniest moment of the season. So yeah, what you got for that?
I presume we haven't been able to load up the video this one, so I'm going to leave it out. But did you see I sent you the clip, and I want everyone else watching or listening to this to search for the clip of it's the final day of the championship season at St Andrews. There's about 10,000 people on the pitch, or however many, several hundred, several thousand. This guy just kicks the ball in anger, loops it over hundreds of people into the back of the net. It's probably my goal of the season, actually. I've really enjoyed footballers and pundits showing respect to badges. On the, you walk into like the Bernabeu or the Etihad, and people suddenly are like, well, you can't step on the badge.
Did you see Rio Ferdinand doing that when he got the guy to record it, and he walked around, and then you saw, just as he cut off the recording, you saw Rio's like, you got it? Stop it, Rio.
Rio's sort of quiet drift into partridge status has been one of my funniest parts of the whole season. But the way that Erik ten Hag has talked about Alejandro Garnacho is actually, I think, elite level stand-up, where at first it's quite funny, and then sort of in true Stuart Lee fashion, you go, all right, is he going to keep bringing this up? But then when he reaches the 33rd, 34th, 35th time, you're like, oh, this is quite funny again. It's properly looped back into like a running bit, a catchphrase. Whatever the question is to Erik ten Hag, it'll be like, yeah, but our entire season changed when Alejandro Garnacho was correctly ruled to be offside. It's been brilliant. It's been brilliant watching this one moment blow Erik ten Hag's mind, ruin his career. Well, I mean, that's obviously it's not that bit of it's not brilliant, but it's funny.
It is funny.
I think you
It's
could
definitely
do.
my funniest moment of the season. Not Ten Hag, just the actual moment itself. You know, I was right next to the away fans, and just having that sort of 5-minute period of where they thought they'd won it, then they had the crushing disappointment of the goal getting ruled out, and then Arsenal scoring twice straight afterwards. So basically, from in the 89th minute being 2-1 up to the
Yeah.
110th minute being 3-1 down and having lost the game, it was just unbelievably funny. And seeing all the clips of like Goldbridge with the sort of celebrations, and then the other United YouTube channels doing the watch-alongs of the utter joy of scoring the goal, and then suddenly the dejection of having it ruled out and losing the game is just hilarious. And yeah, some of the videos that I watched of that was just it was football at its finest. So
It's got
yeah,
so many layers. The way as well that Gabriel, like at first you're like, oh, Gabriel, you got lucky, and then you sort of realize he's done the full contortionist act like Neo in the Matrix
it is
to just get as
Matrix.
much of his body back. It's comedy gold. I feel like you could do a really good. This is look. If we have anyone from Netflix watching, Charles and I were there. We can write this series for you. Can we do like a 6-part sitcom, or comedy drama about how this one moment causes a man to totally unravel? This Eric Ten Hag, when they went to Old Trafford, he's the hero. He's the 2 trophy winner. Or is it 1 trophy? I can't remember. He's talking about dynasties end, eras end. We're ready to. We don't play friendlies at Manchester United, and from that moment onwards, it's sort of like everything that could go wrong in Eric Ten Hag's professional career has gone wrong, and it's like he alone among human history can pinpoint the one moment in his life where everything went wrong, and it was when Gabriel just went, "Oh, lean back."
It was that game. He will. You can imagine in 20 years' time, he'll be managing in the Dutch 3rd division somewhere, and someone will ask him a question about an incident in a game, and he'll somehow bring it back to Arsenal versus United in 2023 at the Emirates. So yeah, that wraps up, I would say, our end of season awards. I hope you've enjoyed it. Whether you agree with them or not, let us know as always in the comments below. What's the plans for the rest? Well, you're heading off to Germany, actually, aren't you?
Berlin, baby.
Nice.
Obviously, the sort of expectation was this would be the final act of the great unbeaten season, and I would be sort of comparing it to, I don't know, the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak was actually one of the things that we were going to sort of talk about in terms of unbeaten sporting runs.
What a streak it was. I was there for a couple of them as well. Absolutely brilliant.
Instead, we've sort of got to turn Bayer Leverkusen, who obviously are an incredibly successful team, but not one of the big names of world football, against second-tier Kaiserslautern into a big game. But I'm really looking forward to going to Berlin and seeing this last act of my beloved Leverkusen.
I'm still so annoyed they ended the Undertaker's streak with Brock Lesnar. Of all the people to end the streak, they chose Brock, who just did not need it at all. There were so many other people they could have given the giant push of beating Undertaker's streak, but not that means anything.
Did he fight again after the streak ended?
Yes, he did. He did. He won.
At
He won. He won the following Mania. Yeah, his last Mania was in COVID time, and his last match was a sort of boneyard match with AJ Styles, which was like a cinematic match that they filmed, sort of not in a ring, but in.
Oh, I remember seeing that on Twitter.
Yeah,
it looked amazing.
That was his last match. And he always felt a bit disappointed that he didn't get his big moment in front of the crowds. But then he came back at this Mania and helped Cody Rhodes win the title. And it was kind of a...
Surely they should have him against this Lesnar lad again so that he can beat him.
Lesnar's... I'm not even going to go there, actually. But he's away from WWE in kind of disgrace at the moment, linked to what's going on with Vince McMahon. But Taker can't. His knees are gone. He's too old. They could never bring him back to do anything now. But anyway, a nice little bit of wrestling chat to end this week's show. Thank you for watching, everyone. Enjoy your trip over to Germany to hopefully see Granit lift the second trophy of his season. Unbelievable. That was his first club defeat yesterday in the final since Nottingham Forest at the City Ground at the end of Arsenal. Unbelievable what season he's had. So yeah, enjoy that trip, mate. And thank you everyone for watching and for listening. As always, we'll be back again next week. I'll be back in the morning with my usual show as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Cheers, James. Have a good one, mate. Speak to you soon.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.